So there's not this hard and fast break that happens when Jesus comes on the scene. There's not a sense in which the law was wonderful and it was great up to a point, and now all of a sudden Jesus is on the scene, so we can just throw that away. It's not necessary anymore. It's no good anymore. It's outdated now. We need something different. We need something new. Nothing could be further from the truth. The law is timeless. Jesus presents himself as the eschatological fulfillment, not a replacement of the law. And again, this is difficult for us. Why? Because we've heard it over and over again, and we've said it over and over again. In fact, one of the words that we like to throw around is legalism. We have no idea what the word legalism actually means. You know what legalism means to the average American Christian? Legalism means you pay more attention to the law than I do. That's what legalism means. You know what legalism means doctrinally? Let me just give you here this brief definition. It's actually a long definition from Bill Baldwin. We won't read all of these points, but I'll just read a few of these. What legalism really is. Number one, using the Mosaic covenant as though it is a covenant between you and God. Using the Mosaic covenant as though is it a covenant between you and God. Okay, God, here's the Mosaic covenant. I'm going to keep it so that I can be blessed because I keep the Mosaic covenant because it's a covenant between me and you. Number two, attempting to be justified by one's own works. Attempting to be justified by one's own work. That's what legalism means. You're actually trying to be justified and think that you're going to get into heaven by what you do. Number three, attempting to be sanctified by one's own work. You actually think that you're going to become a better Christian because of your own effort. Number four, suggesting that our worth or worthiness, our self-esteem and self-satisfaction or lack thereof rest on our own works. Number five, any attempt to please God judicially or any supposition that our sin as believers has resulted in his judicial displeasure. Again, his judicial displeasure. We're talking about justification there. That's what legalism is. Legalism has to do with our not understanding justification. Legalism has to do with our trying to please God because we keep the law. Legalism has to do with us trying in and of ourselves to satisfy the righteous requirements of God. Legalism is that works righteousness that we've been talking about. That's what legalism is. Not delighting in the law of the Lord. No. We should delight in the law of the Lord. It's timeless. Listen to what MacArthur says on this point. So the moral standard set by the law does not change under grace. Indeed, it could not. It is a reflection of God's character. But divine grace actually empowers us to fulfill the moral demands of the law in a way that the law alone could never do. The only way that the law could change is if God changed. God gives us the law as a picture of what holiness and righteousness looks like. The only way for the law to change is if God changes his mind about what's holy and what's righteous. So God would have to say, you know what? I gave it a real good go back there in the Old Testament, but I think me and my son Jesus, we could do better. No, the law's timeless. Thirdly, God's law is relevant and applicable. Right here, right now in our lives today. God's law is relevant and applicable. Look with me, if you will, at the next verse. Look at verse 19. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Here's what's ironic. Here's what we've said. You want to be a really good Christian? Stay on the right side of the Bible. Stay away from the law, because that law stuff, that's antithetical to Christianity. Jesus says, you want to uphold a kingdom ethic? Obey the law. Teach the law. Sounds ironic, doesn't it? Almost sounds out of place. Really makes us uncomfortable. But why? Why? Because of our misunderstanding of this phrase. Listen to the London Baptist Confession, our church's confession of faith, and its statement on the law of God and how relevant and applicable the law is, even right here and right now. This is number 6 in that chapter on the law. Although true believers are not under the law. That's true. We're not under the law. We're going to explain that in a minute. As a covenant of works, to be thereby justified or condemned. Yet it is of great use to them as well as to others, in that, first, as a rule of life, informing them of the will of God and their duty, it directs and binds them to walk accordingly. Secondly, it says it restrains their corruptions. And thirdly, it shows them God's approbation or of obedience and what blessings they may expect upon the performance thereof. In other words, the law is a good thing for believers. Why? Because if the law of God is perfect and you want to be holy as He is holy, you got to have a standard. Where do you get a standard? The law of God. The law of God. You want to have the right attitude toward your own sin? And not just become antinomian and lackadaisical and live any way you want to live? What do? Do you erect some standard from somewhere else? Do we just sort of put our heads together here and come up with some rules that we think would be really good for us to follow? Or do we go to the law of God? It's God's law. It is relevant. It is applicable.